The stars looked peaceful through the viewports of the UES horizon as it drifted toward Kepler's rest station. Ambassador Lisa Martinez stood in the observation deck, watching the distant lights of the neutral meeting place grow larger. She had spent 3 months preparing for these talks with the Zalarian Empire. 3 years of border conflicts and mining disputes would finally end at the negotiation table. Commander Jake Sullivan walked up behind her, his boots clicking on the metal floor. "We'll dock in 2 hours, Ambassador." The Zalarian delegation arrived yesterday. "Their ship is twice the size of ours." Lisa smiled. "Size doesn't win negotiations, Commander. Good arguments do." Jake nodded, but kept his concerns to himself. The Zalarians had been aggressive lately, pushing deeper into human space and claiming ancient rights to systems humans had settled decades ago. This meeting was humanity's best chance for peace, but Jake didn't trust aliens who spoke of ancient claims while pointing weapons at human colonies. In the communication center, Lieutenant Tom Bradley monitored the usual chatter between ships and stations. Trade vessels reported their cargo. Patrol ships shared routine updates. Everything seemed normal until an encrypted signal broke through on all galactic frequencies at once. The message began with a harsh electronic tone that made everyone in the comm center wince. Then a voice spoke in perfect galactic standard, cold and mechanical through voice modification equipment. "Citizens of the galaxy, hear this declaration. The Crimson Void speaks for those oppressed by human expansion and Zalarian weakness. We have taken control of 3 major stations: New Geneva Station in the Tau system, Port Liberty in the Centauri sector, and Haven Base near the Vega mining operations." Tom's hands flew over his console, trying to trace the signal's origin. The transmission continued without pause. "Each station now holds thousands of your people. Humans, Zalarians, Karathi, vegan traders, and their families. Children play in our corridors while their parents work in our docks. All are now guests of the Crimson Void until our demands are met." Jake arrived in the comm center as alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Other vessels in the area were receiving the same broadcast. Trade ships stopped their courses. Military patrols demanded confirmation from their commanders. The peaceful journey to Kepler's rest suddenly felt like sailing into a storm. "Our demands are simple," the voice continued. "The human government will withdraw all military forces from disputed territories. They will surrender their fleet to Zalarian command. They will accept Zalarian authority over all contested systems. These terms are not negotiable." Lisa entered the comm center, her face pale. She had heard the broadcast in her quarters. Behind her came Dr. Alan Price, the expedition's chief xenobiologist, and Captain Ben Rogers, who commanded the escort vessel, UES Defiance, traveling alongside the horizon. "You have 72 hours to comply," the terrorist voice announced. "Every 6 hours that passes without full compliance will cost 1,000 lives. We will begin with the youngest, then the oldest, then random selection. This is not a threat. This is a promise. The blood of innocence rests on human stubbornness." The transmission ended with coordinates for each captured station and images showing crowded civilian areas filled with frightened families. Children pressed against their parents. Elderly couples held hands. Workers still wore their maintenance uniforms, caught during normal shifts when the terrorists struck. Captain Rogers studied the tactical display showing the 3 station locations. "They picked their targets well. New Geneva handles most of the trade between human and Zalarian space. Port Liberty is our biggest research facility in that sector. Haven Base supports the mining operations that caused this whole dispute." Dr. Price analyzed the biological data streaming from the stations. "The life support systems are still functioning normally. Approximately 52,000 people across all 3 locations. The demographics match what we'd expect. Families, workers, researchers, traders from a dozen different species." Jake opened a channel to Earth Command. "Priority Alpha message for Admiral Kate Morrison. Terrorist situation developing. Request immediate orders." While they waited for Earth's response, Lisa sat down heavily in a chair. The peace negotiations seemed impossible now. How could humans and Zalarians discuss mining rights while terrorists held thousands of civilians hostage in the disputed territories? "Ambassador," Dr. Price said quietly. The Zilarian delegation at Kepler's Rest is demanding an immediate meeting. They want to know if this terrorist group speaks for the human government. Lisa shook her head. Of course not. We don't negotiate through terrorism. But they might think we orchestrated this to gain advantage in the talks. The communication console beeped with an incoming message from Earth. Admiral Morrison's face appeared on the screen, her expression grim. Behind her, Jake could see the emergency command center buzzing with activity. Commander Sullivan, Captain Rogers, Ambassador Martinez. We've confirmed the situation at all 3 stations. Intelligence suggests the Crimson Void is led by a rogue, Zilarian named Vextar, formerly a military commander who was discharged for extreme views about human expansion. Admiral Morrison paused, consulting data on her personal display. Vextar disappeared 6 months ago with several ships and a large amount of military equipment. We believe he's been planning this operation since the peace talks were announced. What are our orders, Admiral? Captain Rogers asked. For now, maintain position and gather intelligence. Do not approach the stations. We're analyzing all options. Morrison's voice carried the weight of command, but Jake could see the strain in her eyes. Ambassador Martinez, the President, will address the nation and the galaxy in 4 hours. Be prepared to resume negotiations regardless of circumstances. The transmission ended, leaving the command crew in silence. Through the viewports, Kepler's Rest Station grew larger, its lights twinkling like a small city in space. Somewhere in the galaxy, 50,000 people sat in rooms controlled by terrorists, counting down 72 hours to an impossible deadline. Lisa returned to the observation deck, watching the stars that no longer seemed peaceful. In 4 hours, humanity would give its answer to an ultimatum that offered no good choices. Save lives by surrendering everything, or stand firm and watch innocents die. The clock began counting down. President Helen Carter stood behind the podium in the White House press room. Cameras focused on her from around the world and across the galaxy. Representatives from 23 alien species watched from the diplomatic gallery. The room was silent except for the soft hum of recording equipment. She looked directly into the main camera, her voice steady and clear. Citizens of Earth and beings across the galaxy, I speak to you during a dark hour. Terrorists calling themselves the Crimson Void have taken innocent lives hostage and made demands they claim are non-negotiable. Carter paused, letting her words reach every corner of known space. Let me be equally clear about something that has never changed in human history. The United Earth Federation does not negotiate with terrorists. We do not reward evil with compliance. We do not surrender our freedom to buy temporary safety for hostages. In the diplomatic gallery, alien ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. The Karathi representative whispered urgently to his aide. The Vegan trade minister shook her head in disapproval. We will save those innocent lives, Carter continued, not by giving terrorists what they want, but by taking away their power to hurt anyone ever again. The broadcast ended and chaos erupted across the galaxy. Within minutes, alien news networks condemned humanity's response. The Karathi government issued a statement calling humans heartless warmongers who value pride over life. 3 species recalled their ambassadors from Earth. Trade agreements were suspended. At Luna Command, Admiral Kate Morrison watched the political fallout on multiple screens while coordinating military responses. Captain Ben Rogers appeared on her main communication display from the UES Defiance. Admiral, we're receiving protest from every ship in this sector. They're calling us monsters. Morrison's expression didn't change. Let them talk, Captain. Actions matter more than words. What's the status of Operation Silent Thunder? Lieutenant Colonel Amy Johnson confirms her teams are ready for deployment. We have strike groups positioned in all 3 systems, disguised as routine patrol schedules. On the UES horizon, Commander Jake Sullivan studied tactical displays showing the 3 captured stations. Each one presented unique challenges. New Geneva Station rotated slowly, its artificial gravity making conventional assault difficult. Port Liberty had narrow corridors that could become death traps. Haven Base was massive, with multiple docking bays and residential sections. Dr. Alan Price worked alongside engineer Chris Anderson in the ship's laboratory, analyzing the station schematics that intelligence had provided. The life support systems on all 3 stations use the same manufacturer, Anderson said. Same basic design, same vulnerabilities. Price nodded, examining chemical formulas on his screen. If we can introduce a compound into their air systems simultaneously, we could incapacitate the terrorists without harming the hostages. But the timing would have to be perfect. Across the ship, Ambassador Lisa Martinez tried to salvage the diplomatic situation. The Zalarian delegation had agreed to meet despite the crisis, but their lead negotiator, Minister Korth, seemed more interested in condemning humanity than discussing peace. Your government's refusal to negotiate shows your true nature, Korth said, his scaled face rigid with disapproval. You care nothing for innocent life when your pride is at stake. Lisa kept her voice calm. Minister, we care so much about innocent life that we refuse to create a situation where taking hostages becomes a successful strategy. If we surrender to these demands, every criminal in the galaxy will know that threatening civilians gets them whatever they want. Pretty words, Korth replied, but children are dying while you make speeches about principles. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Amy Johnson briefed her Special Forces teams aboard the stealth ship Shadowhawk. 3 teams, 12 soldiers each, would strike simultaneously across 3 different star systems. Sergeant Ryan Parker commanded Alpha Team for New Geneva Station. Sergeant Lisa Brown led Beta Team targeting Port Liberty. Sergeant Matt Davis headed Charlie Team assigned to Haven Base. The terrorists expect us to either surrender or attack with overwhelming force, Johnson explained to her teams. They're counting on collateral damage to turn the galaxy against us. We're going to disappoint them. Each team studied their target obsessively. Parker's group practiced zero-gravity combat for New Geneva's rotating sections. Brown's team rehearsed close quarters, fighting for Port Liberty's narrow passages. Davis prepared his soldiers for the complex multi-level assault Haven Base would require. 6 hours after the ultimatum began, every screen in known space showed the same horrific image. 100 civilians lay dead in New Geneva Station's main plaza. Men, women, and children from multiple species executed to prove the terrorists meant business. The Crimson Void's mechanical voice returned to galactic frequencies. The first payment has been made. 66 hours remain. 100 lives lost because humanity values pride over peace. The reaction was immediate and brutal. Alien governments imposed economic sanctions on human colonies. Protesters gathered outside human embassies on a dozen worlds. The Galactic Trade Council suspended humanity's membership pending resolution of the crisis. Admiral Morrison received reports of the executions while reviewing final assault plans. Her staff officers watched her face for any sign of wavering. Instead, she opened a channel to all human fleet commanders. Every life lost today is murder committed by terrorists, not by our refusal to surrender. We do not negotiate with killers, we stop them. Her voice carried across secure channels to every human ship in space. Operation Silent Thunder proceeds as planned. Captain Rogers coordinated fleet movements to prevent terrorist reinforcements while maintaining normal patrol appearances. The UES Defiance moved toward Haven Base alongside supply ships and merchant vessels, hiding in plain sight. Engineer Anderson worked through the night perfecting the gas delivery system. The compound had to work on Zalarian physiology, human biology, and the various alien species being held hostage. Too strong and it would kill innocents. Too weak and the terrorists would have time to start executing people. Dr. Price tested the formula on tissue samples from different species. We'll have one chance, he told Anderson. The terrorists will realize what's happening as soon as the first one collapses. As the second day of the crisis began, alien news networks showed crowds demanding human surrender. Children held signs reading, "Save lives, not pride." Religious leaders called for humanity to show mercy. But in secret military facilities across human space, soldiers prepared for the most complex rescue operation in galactic history. They would have one chance to save 50,000 lives while proving that humanity's refusal to negotiate came from strength, not cruelty. The countdown continued. 60 hours remained. The second round of executions hit the galaxy like a hammer blow. This time the terrorists killed 120 people, including 17 children under the age of 10. The images spread across every news network, showing small bodies, lying next to their parents in Port Liberty's main corridor. Admiral Kate Morrison watched the footage in her command center, her jaw set in stone. Around her, staff officers waited for orders, some fighting back tears at the sight of murdered children from multiple species. "Admiral," her communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving surrender demands from the Karathi Parliament, the Vegan Trade Assembly, and 12 other governments. They're threatening to declare us war criminals if we don't comply with terrorist demands." Morrison turned to face her senior staff. "How many terrorists are we tracking across the 3 stations?" "Intelligence estimates 400 to 600 total," replied Colonel Stevens, her operations chief. "Vexitar is confirmed at Haven Base with the largest group. Each station has between 150 to 200 hostiles." "And how many innocents die if we let terrorism work?" Morrison asked. "How many more will be taken hostage next month, when every criminal in the galaxy learns that threatening civilians gets them whatever they want?" She opened a fleet-wide channel to every human ship within 50 light-years. "This is Admiral Morrison to all commands. Every child who died today was murdered by terrorists, not by our principles. We do not save lives by teaching monsters that killing works. We save lives by making sure monsters never get the chance to kill again." On the stealth ship Shadowhawk, Lieutenant Colonel Amy Johnson ran final equipment checks with her 3 assault teams. Sergeant Ryan Parker tested his team's magnetic boots for New Geneva's rotating gravity sections. Sergeant Lisa Brown verified her squad's flashbang grenades for Port Liberty's tight corridors. Sergeant Matt Davis reviewed Haven Base's complex layout one final time. "Remember," Johnson told all 3 teams during their final briefing, "we're not just rescuing hostages. We're proving that humanity protects the innocent by defeating evil, not by feeding it what it wants." Each soldier carried specialized equipment designed for their specific target. Parker's Alpha team had gravity manipulation tools to work in New Geneva's artificial spin. Brown's Beta team carried wall-breaching charges for Port Liberty's reinforced corridors. Davis's Charlie team brought rappelling gear for Haven Base's multiple levels. Engineer Chris Anderson made final adjustments to the gas delivery system aboard the UES Horizon. Dr. Alan Price double-checked the chemical compound that would render terrorists unconscious without harming the various alien species being held captive. "The timing has to be perfect," Anderson explained to Price. "If we deploy too early, they'll have time to kill hostages. Too late, and our teams will be fighting in contaminated air." Price studied readouts from tissue samples. "The compound works on all known species, but Zalarians take 30 seconds longer to lose consciousness. That's our window." Meanwhile, Commander Jake Sullivan coordinated with Captain Ben Rogers to position ships for the simultaneous assault. The UES Defiance moved into Haven Base's system alongside routine supply convoys. Similar preparations occurred near New Geneva and Port Liberty, with human ships disguising their presence among normal traffic. Ambassador Lisa Martinez continued her impossible diplomatic mission at Kepler's rest station. Minister Korth and the Zalarian delegation grew more hostile with each passing hour. "Your species has revealed its true nature," Korth declared during their latest meeting. "You claim to value life, but you let children die rather than show mercy to legitimate grievances." "Legitimate grievances?" Lisa's voice sharpened. "Is that what you call murdering civilians to force political surrender?" "The Crimson Void may use wrong methods, but their cause has merit. Humans expand too aggressively, take too much, give too little." Lisa stood from the negotiation table. "Minister, when this crisis ends, we'll still need to discuss mining rights and borders, but first, humanity will demonstrate why civilized beings don't reward terrorism with success." Reports flooded in from across the galaxy as alien governments increased pressure on humanity. The Karathi military began mobilizing fleets, claiming humanitarian intervention might be necessary. Trade routes through human space were closed. Human colonists on mixed-species worlds faced protests and threats. President Helen Carter received a direct communication from the Galactic Council demanding immediate human compliance with terrorist demands. She declined to respond, instead authorizing final preparations for Operation Silent Thunder. At Luna Command, Morrison reviewed intelligence updates on the 3 stations. New Geneva is maintaining normal rotation patterns. Port Liberty shows increased security at all access points. Haven Base has terrorist patrols on every level. Ma'am, her intelligence chief reported, we've identified Vexitar's location within Haven Base. He's in the command center with approximately 40 of his most loyal followers. Morrison nodded. Charlie team will need that information. What about civilian locations? Hostages are concentrated in central areas of each station, away from docking bays and critical systems. The terrorists are using them as human shields while maintaining operational capacity. On New Geneva Station, families huddled together in the main plaza where the first executions had occurred. Children pressed against their parents, trying not to look at the bloodstains on the deck plates. Zalarian workers sat next to human families, their species' differences forgotten in shared terror. The terrorists patrolled with weapons ready, their leader broadcasting regular threats. 54 hours remain. The humans value their pride more than your lives. Remember that when the next execution begins. At Port Liberty, researchers and technicians who had been working normal shifts when the terrorists struck now survived on emergency rations. The station's narrow corridors echoed with frightened whispers and quiet prayers in a dozen languages. Haven Base, the largest of the 3 stations, held the most hostages, but also provided the most places to hide. Families found refuge in maintenance areas and storage compartments, staying quiet when terrorist patrols passed by. Vextar himself walked through Haven Base's residential levels, studying the fearful faces of his captives. His modified voice echoed through the station's communication system. I fought humans for 30 years in the Zalarian military. I know their nature. They care only for conquest and control. Your deaths mean nothing to them as long as they keep their pride intact. But hidden in the shadows of space, human soldiers prepared to prove him wrong. 3 teams, 36 warriors, would soon demonstrate that humanity's refusal to negotiate came not from pride, but from an absolute commitment to protecting the innocent by destroying those who threatened them. The countdown continued. 50 hours remained, and the galaxy watched to see whether humanity would break or prove that some principles were worth defending, even in the face of impossible choices. Operation Silent Thunder began at exactly 67 hours after the first terrorist broadcast. Admiral Kate Morrison gave the code word from Luna Command, while 3 human assault teams prepared to launch from hidden positions across 3 star systems. Thunder rolls, she announced on secure channels. All teams execute now. Sergeant Ryan Parker led Alpha Team from their stealth pod toward New Geneva Station's maintenance section. The station rotated slowly, creating artificial gravity that made normal boarding impossible. Parker's team used magnetic clamps and gravity boots to crawl along the station's outer hull, while terrorist sensors focused on normal docking approaches. Remember, Parker whispered into his comm unit, we have 37 minutes to clear the entire station. No margin for error. 2 systems away, Sergeant Lisa Brown guided Beta Team through Port Liberty's waste disposal conduits. The narrow passages were barely wide enough for a human in combat armor, but they provided direct access to the station's central areas where hostages were being held. Thermal scans show 43 terrorists between us and the civilian areas, Brown reported. Guards are stationed at every major intersection. At Haven Base, Sergeant Matt Davis split Charlie Team into 3 smaller units. The massive station required simultaneous attacks on multiple levels to prevent terrorists from executing hostages during the assault. Unit 1 takes the upper residential levels, Davis ordered. Unit 2 secures the main plaza. Unit 3 goes after Vextar in the command center. Move fast, move quiet. Engineer Chris Anderson initiated the gas delivery sequence from the UES horizon. His modified compounds began flowing through the life support systems of all 3 stations simultaneously. The colorless, odorless mixture would render Zalarians unconscious in 90 seconds, humans in 60 seconds, and other species at varying rates. Gas deployment confirmed, Anderson reported to Admiral Morrison. Teams have 90 seconds before the effect becomes noticeable. Parker's Alpha team reached New Geneva's inner corridors just as the first terrorist guard stumbled and fell. The Zalarian warrior tried to raise an alarm but collapsed before reaching his communication device. Parker signaled his team forward. 2 down in Corridor 7, he whispered. Hostages are in the main plaza, 30 meters ahead. At Port Liberty, Brown's Beta team encountered their first resistance when a terrorist patrol discovered an unconscious guard. The alien warrior fired his weapon wildly before the gas took effect, alerting others to the assault. Stealth is blown, Brown announced. All units, weapons free, protect the civilians. Haven Base erupted in chaos as Davis's Charlie team fought their way through multiple levels. Unit 1 rappelled down elevator shafts to reach terrified families, hiding in residential areas. Unit 2 advanced through the main plaza while unconscious terrorists fell around them. Unit 3 battled toward Vextar's command center. The terrorist leader's voice echoed through Haven Base's communication system. The humans come, kill the hostages, deny them their victory. But his followers were already succumbing to the gas. Those still conscious struggled to aim their weapons as the compound affected their nervous systems. Many collapsed while trying to reach the civilian areas. Parker's team reached New Geneva's main plaza where 800 hostages cowered behind makeshift barriers. Terrorist guards lay unconscious around the perimeter, their weapons scattered on the floor. This is Alpha Team, Parker announced to the frightened civilians. United Earth Forces, you're safe now. Medical teams are standing by. A human child no more than 6 years old looked up at Parker with wide eyes. Are the bad people gone? Yes, sweetheart, Parker replied, removing his helmet so she could see his face. The bad people can't hurt anyone anymore. Brown's Beta team fought room by room through Port Liberty's narrow corridors. The gas gave them a crucial advantage, but some terrorists had found breathing masks and continued fighting. Brown used flashbang grenades to disorient the remaining enemies while her soldiers advanced with non-lethal rounds. Civilian area secured, she reported. 920 hostages safe, minor injuries only. At Haven Base, Davis's Unit 3 breached Vextar's command center to find the terrorist leader wearing a full environmental suit. The Zalarian commander fired wildly with both hands, shouting threats through his suit's speakers. You cannot win. The galaxy sees your true nature. Killers protecting killers. Davis dodged the wild shots and tackled Vextar, wrestling away his weapons. The terrorist leader fought desperately, but could not match human strength and training. Vextar is down, Davis announced. Command center secured. Throughout the 3 stations, human soldiers moved with precision and purpose. They carried wounded civilians to medical stations, provided water and food to frightened children, and spoke gently to traumatized families from multiple species. Dr. Alan Price monitored biological readings from all 3 locations. Gas is dissipating on schedule. No adverse reactions detected in any hostage populations. Terrorist casualties are minimal, mostly unconscious with some minor injuries from falls. Engineer Anderson tracked the technical aspects of the rescue. Life support systems are returning to normal operation. Station integrity is maintained. Docking bays are clear for medical evacuation. Admiral Morrison received status reports from all 3 teams within 36 minutes of launch. New Geneva, 800 hostages rescued, 47 terrorists captured alive. Port Liberty, 920 hostages safe, 39 terrorists in custody. Haven Base, 2,200 hostages secured, 81 terrorists captured including Vextar. The total count was staggering. Over 4,000 hostages rescued alive with only minor injuries. 167 terrorists captured for trial. 0 civilian casualties during the rescue operation. Captain Ben Rogers coordinated the medical evacuation as hospital ships rushed to all 3 stations. Doctors and nurses from multiple species worked together to treat the rescued hostages, many of whom had been living on emergency rations for 3 days. Commander Jake Sullivan opened communication channels to share news of the successful rescue with the galaxy. Within minutes, the story spread across every network and news service in known space. The images were powerful. Human soldiers carrying wounded alien children to safety. families of different species embracing their rescuers, terrorists being led away in restraints while their former hostages watched in relief and amazement. Vextar, now in custody aboard a human prison ship, made one final statement before his trial. "I expected you to surrender or attack with brute force. I never imagined you could save them all." The galaxy that had condemned humanity's refusal to negotiate now watched in stunned silence as the rescue operation's success became undeniable. Every major news network showed the same footage: thousands of rescued civilians, terrorist leaders in custody, and human soldiers who had risked everything to save innocent lives. Operation Silent Thunder was complete. The message was clear. Humanity did not negotiate with terrorists because humanity had a better solution. They rescued the victims and captured the criminals. They proved that mercy meant defeating evil, not feeding it. President Helen Carter stood before the same cameras that had broadcast her refusal to negotiate 3 days earlier. This time, the diplomatic gallery was packed with alien representatives who had returned to Earth after the successful rescue operation. Their faces showed a mixture of amazement and respect that had been absent before. "Citizens of Earth and beings across the galaxy," Carter began, "today we proved something important about the nature of mercy. True compassion is not giving evil what it demands. True mercy is ensuring that evil can never demand anything again." Behind her, screens showed footage from the 3 rescued stations. Children from multiple species played together in medical bays while their parents recovered from the ordeal. Human soldiers shared meals with alien families they had saved. Doctors from different worlds worked side by side treating the rescued hostages. 4,137 innocent beings are alive today because humanity chose to act rather than submit. We saved lives not by rewarding terrorism, but by defeating it completely. The Karathi ambassador who had called humans warmongers just days before now stood to applaud. The Vegan trade minister who had suspended all agreements with humanity requested an immediate meeting to restore diplomatic relations. 12 species that had recalled their ambassador sent them back to Earth with formal apologies. At the Galactic Tribunal on Kepler's rest station, Vextar faced charges of terrorism, kidnapping, and murder. The former Zalarian military commander sat in restraints while prosecutors from multiple species presented evidence against him and his followers. The defendant claims he acted to protect Zalarian interests, the lead prosecutor announced. But his actions endangered Zalarian civilians, alongside humans and other species. He is a criminal, not a freedom fighter. Vextar spoke in his own defense, his voice no longer disguised by electronic modification. "I expected the humans to surrender, or attack with massive force that would kill hostages and prove their brutality. I never anticipated a rescue operation that would save everyone while capturing us alive." The chief judge, an elderly Karathi female, studied the evidence files. "You gambled with thousands of innocent lives based on your assumptions about human nature. Your assumptions were wrong. Your actions were inexcusable." Ambassador Lisa Martinez resumed peace negotiations with Minister Korth and the Zalarian delegation. The terrorist crisis had changed the entire dynamic of the talks. Where once the Zalarians had negotiated from a position of strength, they now faced a humanity that had demonstrated both military capability and moral clarity. "The mining rights. In the Vega sector," Korth said carefully, "perhaps we can reach a compromise that benefits both our peoples." Lisa smiled. "Minister, I think you'll find humanity very reasonable when dealing with those who negotiate in good faith rather than through violence." The final agreement gave humans primary mining rights in exchange for technology sharing and guaranteed employment for Zalarian workers. Both sides established joint anti-terrorism protocols to prevent future incidents like the Crimson Void attacks. Admiral Kate Morrison received the Galactic Medal of Honor from the same council that had condemned her actions just days before. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Johnson and her 3 assault teams were decorated by representatives from every species whose citizens they had rescued. The precision of Operation Silent Thunder, the Galactic Defense Minister announced, will be studied in military academies across known space. It represents the highest standard of professional soldiering and civilian protection. Sergeant Ryan Parker, Sergeant Lisa Brown and Sergeant Matt Davis stood with their teams as children they had rescued, presented them with drawings and thank you notes in a dozen different languages. A young Zalarian girl gave Parker a small, carved stone from her homeworld. "You saved my daddy," she said in careful Galactic standard. "My daddy says humans are good people who keep promises." Dr. Alan Price and engineer Chris Anderson received the Scientific Achievement Award for developing the gas deployment system that had made the rescue possible. Their technique was immediately adopted by Galactic Emergency Services for future hostage situations. "The compound saved thousands of lives," Price told the assembly, "but the real heroes are the soldiers who risked everything to reach those civilians in time." Captain Ben Rogers and Commander Jake Sullivan coordinated the return of rescued hostages to their homeworlds. Medical ships carried the former captives to proper hospitals where they could recover from their ordeal with their families. Many of the rescued civilians requested permission to thank their human rescuers personally. The most moving moment came when parents whose children had been killed in the terrorist executions met with the assault teams. "You could not save our little ones," a Karathi father told Sergeant Brown, "but you made sure no other children would suffer the same fate. That is justice." The trial of Vexitar and his followers lasted 2 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage showed the executions, the hostage-taking, and the terrorist leader's commands to kill civilians during the rescue attempt. The tribunal sentenced Vexitar to life imprisonment on a secure world where he could never again threaten innocent lives. His followers received lesser sentences but would spend decades in custody paying for their crimes. During his final statement, Vexitar made an admission that shocked the galaxy. "I chose to take hostages because I believed humans would either surrender or respond with overwhelming force that killed civilians. Either outcome would have served my cause. I never imagined they could rescue everyone." The Galactic Council formally apologized to humanity for their earlier condemnation and passed new resolutions supporting strong action against terrorism. The Human Protection Doctrine became the official policy for dealing with hostage situations throughout known space. Trade agreements with humanity were not just restored but expanded. Alien governments that had imposed sanctions now competed to offer favorable deals with the species that had proven its commitment to protecting innocent life, regardless of political cost. President Carter's final address to the galaxy became known as the Freedom Speech. Her words were carved into monuments on 100 worlds and taught in schools across multiple species. Today, children of many worlds sleep safely because humanity refused to teach monsters that taking hostages works. We did not negotiate with terrorists because we had something better to offer their victims. We offered rescue, justice, and the promise that evil actions bring consequences, not rewards. The memorial service for the 220 civilians killed during the crisis was attended by representatives from every known species. Human and alien leaders spoke together about the price of freedom and the courage required to protect it. The final image broadcast across the galaxy showed children from multiple worlds playing together in a park on Earth. Human children taught alien friends to throw a baseball. Solarian youngsters showed human kids how to sing traditional songs. Karathi children shared their favorite games with everyone. Above them, a simple memorial bore the names of those who had died, and a single line that became humanity's promise to the galaxy. "We do not negotiate with terrorists. We rescue their victims." The stars looked peaceful again, but now the galaxy knew that peace was protected by those willing to fight for it when evil made its demands. Humanity had shown the way forward, and the message echoed across every world where freedom mattered more than fear.